So good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Tonight, I'm going to talk about a story, and that story is the northeast of England. And it's not about property, it's about change. So if you've ever traveled across the northeast, you'll see it everywhere. Towns that were once Britain's industrial age and empowering what's happening now, it's changing and it's empowering the future. So what you see across skylines across the northeast right now, you'll see cranes on skylines, scaffolding on old buildings, new businesses opening up. And this is where all shipyards once stood, right? So this is the story of a region that's being rebirthed right now. And at the heart of that transformation is a town called Blyth that used to be known for coal and shipbuilding. It's now becoming the hub for clean energy, digital infrastructure, and innovation. Our agenda for tonight, I'll keep it brief. We'll focus on who we are as a business, why we focus on the Northeast, why specifically Blyth, what strategies to look at, case study, and some Q&A at the very end. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in and let me know. We're a small enough crowd tonight, so I'll be able to take questions throughout the presentation. So feel free to just jump in and ask any questions. So KLAP Property Group, we were born from a simple belief that property can be the true bridge to financial freedom when it's done properly. So that's when it's done with integrity, strategy, and knowledge. This year alone, 2025, we've facilitated over £1.2 million worth of transactions, specifically in the northeast of England, specifically from Blyth to Middlesbrough. I've also written a book called The Property Deal Finder's Handbook. It's a guide that we've used in our own business. It's the same systems and lessons we apply within our daily business today. And that's why the book was written. And that is why I run these webinars. I also publish a weekly blog that goes out every Thursday. Because success in property doesn't come from luck. It comes from knowledge, strategy, and education. And our mission is simple: to build your future one property at a time. So why the Northeast? The Northeast is one of the UK's most underestimated property markets right now. Here you have affordability, you have high yields, and massive regeneration. The average property price in the UK is well below the average right now. So when the entry cost is lower, and of course rental yields are among some of the highest across the country, and billions of pounds being invested in infrastructure and regeneration, which is demanding growth. The combination creates the perfect setup for an investor who's looking for growth and cash flow. So let's focus on our spotlight town this evening. Let's talk specifically about Blyth. The average property around in Blyth at the moment is between 150 and 160,000 pounds, with average yields for a standard buy-to-let between 10 and 15%. With the right property, the right buy-to-let strategy. HMOs have a massive demand right now, especially amongst contractors, specifically in the energy sector, and young professionals moving into the area with rental yields of between 15 and 22%. But beyond the numbers, Blyth has its own regeneration story. The town is being transformed by major investment, notably the £10 billion investment in a data center campus, which is one of the largest. In fact, it's one of the largest of its kind across Europe. That single project alone creates thousands of jobs across construction, energy, engineering, technology. And then of course it has long-term housing demands. On top of that, there's a £70 million investment going across the town centre that's improving retail, leisure, public spaces, and it's attracting businesses and professionals. The reopening of the Northumberland line, which is a connection specifically between Blyth and Newcastle, is a major game changer. It's opening up the doors for commuters, investors, and new residents. So when you combine the scale of the data campus and the wider regeneration and the transport links, you get a town that's rapidly shifting from its industrial roots to a future-focused investment hotspot. And it's right in the heart of the Northeast. Right, guys. Now let's let's paint this picture of Blyth and the regeneration story that's going on there. Not long ago, Blyth was known mainly as a quiet coastal town with an industrial past. But today, it's standing at the center of one of the most ambitious regeneration stories across the UK. The £10 billion investment, which is transforming Blyth from what is becoming Europe's largest data center, which involves digital hubs, it's powering engineering, all for cloud computing and artificial intelligence. As a side note, outside of the US at the moment, the UK is the largest adopters of AI anywhere in the world. There's a company called 11 Labs, and 11 Labs are the guinea pigs for this data center. So if you're in the tech space, this is definitely a place to invest in or look at. So when we think about what it means for the local economy, there's thousands of jobs, right? Not just in construction, but engineering, data management, power systems, and technology. These are skilled professionals moving in, and companies are being set up with supply chains certainly expanding, which is creating a ripple effect throughout the Northeast. But here's where the real opportunity lies for property investors. Every one of those jobs needs somewhere to call a home. So think about your IT specialists, your contractors. They all need short-term or long-term houses so that they can get to work. That's what's driving the demand for HMOs and high-quality buy-to-lets. Alongside that, we've got the £10 billion data center, alongside the £10 billion data center and the £70 million Blyth Town Centre renewal. So we're talking about a modern public spaces, new retail, new leisure developments, upgraded transport links, all designed to attract working professionals, families, and businesses back into the heart of the city. The Northumberland line, which is newly open, I think it was only opened earlier this year, it's a direct link between Blyth and Newcastle. This single line is an absolute game changer because it turns Blyth from once a quiet coastal town into a true commuter hub. It's putting the heart and city for employment and a lifestyle of opportunities just minutes away. So because it's a coastal town, Newcastle is literally only about 10 minutes away on this new commuter line. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. The regeneration isn't happening in isolation. It's strategically tied to Blyth's clean energy and digital sector industries, which is building the future and not from its historical past of coal. So it's about a town being reborn with sustainable economy for skilled employment that's certainly going to grow, which will reopen new shops, thriving cafes, and schools are growing. This is turning that into an economic hub across the Northeast right now. When we look at funding strategies, it's the lifeblood of property investing, as we all know. Any deal won't just happen without funding. It could either make or break your portfolio. Many investors look at flips. Their first step, they're going to interest-only mortgages to maximize and leverage their cash flow. But not all lenders are the same. You need to understand which product fits your strategy. For example, some lenders wouldn't like HMOs while others would like. So it's understanding who is the right broker to work with for your particular project. Bridging finance is something we use massively within our business. It's short-term, fast-moving capital because it's perfect for those projects that aren't mortgageable ready. So think of those terraced houses in Blyth that you want to convert into either a high-yielding HMO or buy-to-let. A bridge loan gets you in. It allows you to do your refurb and then get you to refinance onto a better product. Of course, it costs money. On average, you're looking at about 1% per month for the cost. But if you think about it, speed and flexibility often outperforms cheaper rates in the long run. Joint ventures is something we do a lot within KLAP Property Group. We work with a lot of companies that want to joint venture with us because we're able to scale fast. You're able to pool your money and go after projects that as an individual, you're not able to go after on your own. But the key to a joint venture has got to be a win-win. It's got to be clarity on the roles. You've got to understand what your returns are, what your exit strategies from day one, because that will avoid the pain later on down the line. And then stress testing. This is certainly not something that most investors do when it comes to stressing. But what happens if your interest rates goes up, or your tenants move out and you have voids for the next 3 months, or your refurb costs overrun? When you build this into your numbers and your deal still stacks, then you definitely got a deal. But if you don't, please walk away, because this is where most investors fall short. They chase the perfect deal on a spreadsheet. But let's be honest, property doesn't live in a spreadsheet. It lives in the real world. So if you plan for those surprises, you'll survive. If you ignore them, you will bleed cash. When we talk about mistakes, these are traps I see all too often that investors fall into again and again. Every refurb can look simple on paper, but when the builder lifts up the floorboard and all of a sudden you've got a hole in your budget, it's so important to have that contingency of 10 to 20%, because it's not about you being pessimistic, it's about you being realistic. And the great thing is, if you don't use it, it's part of your profit. When you ignore tenant demand, too many investors, they buy property because it's cheap. But cheap certainly and most definitely does not mean profitable. If tenants don't want to live there, or the local jobs market doesn't support your rent requirements, that property very, very quickly becomes a liability. So it's so important to understand the micro locations, understand where people want to live, work, and commute from. Understand what your tenant profile is, because after all, this isn't about property, it's about people. When it comes to over leveraging, expansion absolutely feels great. But if you're stacking debt without a clear exit strategy, you're building a house of cards. We've seen too many investors undone, not by a bad deal, but by the lack of liquidity. So when it comes to rates rising or tenants moving out, it's so important to keep a reserve, because the strongest portfolios are certainly not the biggest. They're the most resilient. And my pet peeve about property investing, that set and forget trap. The idea that property is passive. It's not. The most successful landlords review their rents, they optimize their expenses, they keep their properties fresh, and they build relationships with their tenants. Because property is an active investment. And if you treat it that way, you will outperform every single time. A case study this evening. This is a live deal that we have at the moment. It's deal number 100. It's a typical deal for the Northeast right now, that 39K deal. So it's well below the stamp duty threshold, which is 40,000. The refurbs that we do, it's a back to brick. So it goes 35.6, which is back to brick. And this is including furniture. So you get your furniture included in this particular deal. Then, of course, the valuation of 90,000. We've sold several properties within a half-mile radius, specifically of this type of deal. So we do a lot of this type of deal with the monthly profit on this one around about 750 plus. and annual rents just over 9,000. This represents a 76% return on your capital employed. You pull all your money out of this deal in 18 months. Every cent that you put in, and then it's paying you 15% growth. No bank, let's be honest, no bank pays you those sort of returns. But the real story isn't just the numbers. This deal works because we've chosen the right location. We understand where the tenant demand is. We understand how it aligns with the regeneration story. And this particular deal has 5 exit strategies. It could be a standard buy-to-let. It could be a standard AST HMO. It could be rented out to a rent guarantee or to a charity and a flip. So understanding your exit strategies is as important. When you start analyzing deals, you need to know what the exit is, because that's what turns a cheap deal into a wealth building asset. Now, nothing speaks louder than results, right? Let's be honest. Investors who've worked with us often highlight our integrity, transparency, and market knowledge. People like Dave or Emmy who praise us for our end-to-end service, or the readers of the Property Deal Finder's Handbook say it's a game changer. It's practical, there's no fluff, and it's results driven. These testimonials means an absolute hell of a lot to me as a person and to the business, because it shows what we are doing isn't just about profit. It's about helping people achieve their goals with confidence. So let's take a step back. The Northeast is definitely affordable. The regeneration is on a scale like we've not seen across the UK for decades. You've got Newcastle continuing to is growing, and the region's economic heart. It's probably the most strongest economy, local town economy across the Northeast at the moment. And then, of course, you've got, the cities being renovated, tech businesses are moving in, service providers are moving, and the housing demands keep rising year after year. And just a short commute away, you've got Blyth, which is completely being reimagined with the £70 million investment into the town centre, renewal of public spaces, and upgrading the transport. Then, of course, at the same time, we've got that £10 billion investment, which is reshaping the Blyth for decades to come and creating thousands of highly skilled jobs, which will have a ripple effect for demand for housing across the Northeast. So when you connect those two stories, Blyth's affordability and regeneration with Newcastle and the economic strength and the momentum, you see the powerful growth. That corridor starts to emerge. This isn't about one town. It's about an entire region being transformed together to create long-term opportunities for investors to move early and to move smart. And that's where we at KLAP Property Group come in. We are active across 15 towns across the Northeast. We're identifying where regeneration is going on. We're identifying the infrastructure projects and the affordability. When these all intersect, that's why we run these webinars, and we go deep as we've done tonight with Blyth. And for me, I'm passionate about helping other people, right, to discover the potential of the Northeast. And as a property entrepreneur and an author, my mission is simple, is to help you build your future one property at a time. So before we wrap up, we run these every 2 weeks. It's a chance to understand the rhythm of the Northeast, and how the market's evolving by town and project by project. But the truth is, what we do is not for everybody. Every investor is different. They have different goals. They have different circumstances and different strategies. That's why we always begin with the discovery call. It's not a sales pitch. Gareth, you've actually been on one of our discovery calls. It certainly wasn't a sales pitch, I would say. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are.
No, it wasn't. It was a nice chat.
Yes, it was a discovery call to try and understand what your goals are, what you're looking for, where you want to go, what you see the future looks like. Would that be a fair assessment?
That's absolutely right. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So, if you've been inspired by tonight, let's book a discovery call and understand where you are at. Obviously, if you join the WhatsApp community, so I don't know, Gareth or Celestine, if you join the WhatsApp community, you can get a copy of the Blyth report like I put in with the Hartlepool report. Effectively, it's a 2-page document that was generated by this company we spoke about earlier on. And I've broken it down by town. So if you join the WhatsApp community, I'll make sure it's in there for you. And of course, you can get a copy of the book. If you are a Kindle user and if you're not, sign up for the 30-day free trial and get a copy of the book free of charge. So that's the end of my presentation.